So, the Fell Xenologue. It's been out for, at the time of recording, about 2 weeks. And I felt like it had enough time to sit and marinate, let everyone dip their toes in, and figure out what they were all trying to go for with this type of style. And I thought, alright, now's the time for kind of going over my initial thoughts and impressions. I actually did have another recording of this that was unfortunately corrupted by just, my new computer being horrible, but also very good at the same time, because it just won't edit through. But anyways, I'm gonna exert it. Here's kind of my initial thoughts and a review of the Fell Xenologue that was released for Fire Emblem Engage. Now, this is kind of strange with how it initially starts off. I guess we'll get into the plot. Like previous Fire Emblem DLCs that have released, this is another Elseworld story detailing certain events that happen in the parallel lithos, describing how the attack with Sombron, I guess I should say this as well, spoilers ahead, if you don't want to know them, why'd you click on it, but hey, whatever. But this is detailing different events that happen within the main story. So, at the time of recording, I haven't posted it up yet, but different events that reveal that Alear being a Fell Dragon change in accordance to history that we know it. In our world, Alear, after being defeated by their past selves who accepted themselves for who they are and siding with Lumera, is still on Lumera's side in this Elseworld story. However, that is where our story begins to differ. Instead of striking out Sombron in that final battle, Lumera is able to seal Sombron away at the cost of her life, with Alear becoming the new Divine Dragon after Sombron is sealed. So instead of the beginning, where Alear has that initial, I've been asleep for 1,000 years, so I'm still 17, even though I'm 1,017. They changed it to where Alear was awake for that entire time. Their design is even different, where instead of the same blue and red hair that we have grown accustomed to, it's full-on blue, mirroring Lumera's hair and becoming a true Divine Dragon. And in this case, Alear has been around for 1,000 years. It has the wisdom and experience and the maturity to lead a country, or in this case, the entire world, as their religious figure. However, something still happened, i.e. Sombron coming back 1,000 years later. And in this case, we do basically get what we had in the original timeline, where they strike each other down. And in this case, the world kind of goes to crap, for lack of a better term. Everyone's kind of on opposite sides, everyone's against each other, characters are different, or character motivations are different, and it's just all gone to crap. And it's kind of like the situation in Awakening, where Naga, the Divine Dragon of that world, says, hey, there's a problem in another world, I want you to go fix it, to Chrom and Robin. They're like, yeah, sure, alright. But in this case, it's Alear, who's already dead. Alear's long since dead, her spirit's essentially just there chilling. It's saying, you'll never see me again, and hopefully you would never have to. And in this case, since I have a male Alear, it's a female Alear in another world. And this Alear is saying, hey, my world's eventually going to be in trouble. I need someone to go in and help everyone. And our Alear is like, yeah, sure, I'll go help. And they do. And in this case, that's where we meet our next set of characters being shown in the story. That being one of the Fell Dragons. This case, Nil and Nell. As you just saw, I kind of cycle through the different pictures of what goes on there in the story. Nell and Nil weren't initially trying to summon Alear. No, they were trying to summon a new emblem, because in this world, they have emblem bracelets versus emblem rings, and they have 7 versus I believe are 12 or 13, if we count Alear as the 13th emblem. I believe I could be off because it has been a while since I actually recorded, but that happens, and it's sort of a pseudo prequel sequel to explain how the rings got on the Divine Paralog, the Divine Islands, for you to go and grab them. So in this case, like, oh, you grab Tiki, you grab Camilla, you grab Hector, you grab Soren, all that. Like, you don't know how they get there initially, because in the first 3 waves, they're just kind of there. You're like, oh, sure, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. New rings, new powers, new abilities, we go in. But this, again, explains like a sort of pseudo prequel, sequel, to explain how things work. Because you can see it right here in one of the pictures, that we have a fallen Tiki. A fallen emblem Tiki, and it's like, how does that work? Well, in this world that Nell and Nil, these 2 fell dragons, summoned the Leer to, again, they're trying to summon a new emblem from one of like the past games. Is like, hey, we need new help. In this case, they got another Leer. While they're initially like, we're kind of put off, specifically Nell, the female one, who's basically Shamir, but a dragon. And Nil, who is a scrawny, not powerful character who is very, very weak in all the chapters you use them in. They say, yeah, we're trying to summon an emblem, but hey, we'll take your power. Nell's more like, we'll use you. Well, Nell's just trying like, hey, yeah, you can help us. We can fix the world and everything. But they are suddenly stopped because they're trying to explain like how the world basically went to crap, basically going over what I just said earlier. And it is really bad, because you have people like the Fiernese, where Alfred and them all come from. Instead of being peaceful, nice, kind, and caring, they're very ruthless and very cruel, very quick to anger. And that's because some more subtle differences happen. With the second war with Sombron, everything just kind of goes to hell. And they explain it when you get there, when I get there further on. But it's the same. Even like the whole world map is flipped, where Fierne, Brodia, they were on the left side in our world, they're on the right side in here. And it kind of reflects in how the world is. That Brodia is like very cold, very barren, and very dark, kind of like Illusia is. But the only downside being it's like Illusia's still the same, except now you got crazy people running around, doing everything. But when you're summoned, you get brought in and you fight this mysterious assassin who's basically coming in and is like, okay, hey, yeah, you know that last emblem? I'm gonna need it. Because each of the emblems are divided up between the nations like in the original world, but in this case, it's not like there's 2 per nation. It's just like some nations have one, some nations don't. We're gonna take yours and you're gonna give them, and you're gonna shut up about it. Actually, no, like most countries actually have 2, with the exception of, because let me pull it up here. I know I'm kind of cycling through it. You have Hector, Soren, Veronica, Robin, and Crom, Tiki, Camilla, and the emblem bracelet for the 3 houses lords. They're all separate because the 3 houses are one. Camilla and Tiki, they're their own separate ones. Crom and Robin, they're a pair. Veronica's her own, Soren's his own, and Hector's his own. But it's really like just different. Like sometimes they have 2, it's like 1, some are hidden everywhere. Like when you initially face off against this mysterious assassin, you take Emblem Tiki, and a leader can't call out their name. And our leader hypothesizes, it's probably because I'm not of this world that the incantation isn't coming to me. And they're like, alright, yeah, sure, we'll just seal it away, that way no one can use its power. Though, it's something kind of like a plot hole related later on, where they try to explain, yeah, sealing it away is not that good, because if they do this, they get that, but we're going to do something with them. It explains, like, the whole situation with that. So you go on, and, like, your goal is kind of like the same in the main campaign. You're going to go through each single country, and you're going to basically take their emblem rings, like, alright, yeah, no, everyone's an a-hole here, we're not letting everyone use it. And you basically see it here with Alfred and Celine as characters. When Alfred and Celine show up, they are very different. You can almost say like they're exaggerated, Flanderized versions of themselves. That being that Alfred is extremely cautious and almost not quick to anger, because he wants to make sure that everyone kind of comes back safe and does their job, kind of like how the original, but now it comes off as he's being cowardly about it. where Celine has gone from like a demure princess who's kind of aggressive at times to full on like war criminal. Just like, no, we need the resources or else our people are going to die. And if people are going to die, then so be it. If I could find the picture of Celine just kind of like going like insane, like with that one clip of that everyone's using in the DLC where she's like that insane face, like if they must die, so be it. I believe I have it, so I will actually do have it, so I'm going to copy it right now so I can just like show it off and just like add a new scene. We're gonna add a new scene. So here we're adding a new scene to this because like I'm just like throwing these out, so excuse me while I like get this through and all that. And it's still a very interesting scene because like the world, like they said, has gone to crap. People are dying, like the countries are going to war with each other. So, like you see it right here. As for the Barbarians, if they must suffer in order for our people to live, so be it. That is like one of the scenes from like the trailer. Was like, oh crap, what the hell is wrong with our characters? And that's why people were like, oh, are these gonna be evil people? And in reality, as you go through the story, it kind of shifts because we have like another set of characters that we have that you were seeing in the trailer. These are characters that you encounter in the main game, being the four Fangs, being Zephyr, Marnie, Marvier, and Grease. No, Grease. Yeah, Grease. Gris. They are your enemies, but in this version, you actually have something different for regards of how you're dealing with them. Because you see it right here, we have a character called Celestia, who functionally is the exact same as Zephyr in terms of appearance, but is like the complete opposite personality. And it's actually differences in the timeline, just like subtle little differences, like the butterfly effect is going on and affecting everyone, where characters like Celestia, instead of her family dying because of everything going to crap, because of her power being too strong, she was actually considered very weak, and she actually got to live a happy life with her family, and thus is able to live a happy life, become nice, and has a very motherly personality. You see with her Veil supports when she's trying to be motherly to her, and Veil is very uncomfortable with it because of her because of Zephyr. And it's like very nice things, and like the little butterfly effect, things just changing all that. Celine becomes like basically, like I said, a warmonger, but she's kind of doing it for the right reasons. It's like very strange, but it also works out very well. But anyways, you would fight these two characters, and when Nell and Nair show up, they're like, hey, give us your emblem ring. We're trying to make sure that no one, like, someone tried to attack us and steal ours, so we're trying to make sure no one goes to crap. And it's trying to tell them, they're like, we don't trust Fell dragons. A little hint of racism there. But to be fair, it's like the spawn of Satan helped destroy the world and killed God. You'd probably be understandably kind of pissed if their kids came up like, hey, yeah, no, we're trying to help save the world. Like, yeah, sure you are. But after doing all that, and like, a leader shows up like, hey, no, we shouldn't fight. We should be on the same side doing all that. And they're like, you're alive? But how? Like, you shouldn't be alive. We know you died. And it's like, it's very messed up stuff like this that it shows that the characters are still kind of themselves deep down. It's just like very few things have caused them to like change in how they respond to other characters. And they say, hey, maybe we shouldn't fight. They may say, no, you're corrupted. You've been brought back to life. You are, and they blame Nil and Nell, obviously. Again, like the little, it's a joke, but come on, like, yeah, you know, the Fell dragons, you revive people. The comeback is dead, and now you bring our friend back. Nah, you gotta die now. And essentially, and you fight them. But here's the thing: they have very aggressive dialogue. If you fight them with people who aren't like your main lords, in this case, Nil. Like they are like, and even a character like Celestia doesn't even really get unique dialogue all that often within this like whole scenario. But if you bring characters like Boucheron, like Chloe, Etienne, Louis, the characters change. They don't become this very aggressive character like, no, you gotta die because of all the things you did. You're trying to stop us. They become somber. They become broken. They were wondering, how are you alive? And it's revealed only through like optional battle dialogue that they're asking like, why are you here? Is the world tormenting me? And this is where you figure out that the characters aren't evil. They've been broken. They've been broken by the world because not only has their religious leader and their friend, this friend that's been with them all their lives, listening to them, all giving them all these things, not only is their friend the divine dragon gone, and then the people they grew up with are gone. Their families are gone. Queen F, she's dead. The Queen of Solm, dead. King Morian, gone, but that was going to happen anyway, because you saw with the original timeline. Lucius King, gone. Like, all of them are dead, and basically it forces these characters to grow up in very dramatic ways that they are not ready for. And thus, it changed their characters dramatically. So again, with Queen F dying, and for what Celine says to Alfred, saying like, you're cowardly for not doing this until they show up and fight. Anyways, the fight goes out, happens. If you get other dialogue with them fighting themselves, the characters kind of like analyze themselves. Celine, basically, our Celine calls this one stupid. Like, I cannot believe you're so hopelessly stupid enough to try this. And Alfred has a more of a comedic one where he's like, oh, no muscles here either. Though this is kind of like sad on his part if you know his support chain. Anyways, you defeat them. Nell like, hey, we're not your enemies. We are actually trying to make sure that no one stops us because they try to do all these things. Anyways, like that all happens. We take the emblem ring and they ask like, hey, can we come with you to go hell? And Alira's like, yeah, sure, we're all down for it. And they try to go off. And then Nell's like, no. And Alira's like, wait, what? Like, what's your problem? And like Nell's like, no, I don't want to deal with this. Like, we're not going with them. This is not their fight. And they need to stay here for the people. And Alira's like, yeah, I get it. But they're willing to help. And Nell basically, and if they die, Alira's like, all right, fine. Yeah, because like they have to stay there for their people. And they just overall like really change as characters. They stay, so you're kind of limited to how your characters are. And I guess I should get into how deployment works in this type of scenario. Whatever point you're at in the story is the point you enter in with everything going for you. So if you enter in late game like I did, where I only have like 3 chapters left, you have everyone pretty much going for you, you're all loaded out, you got all the DLC. This is apparently a fairly smooth ride throughout most of it. The problem that I have with some of this DLC is the level of deployment. They kind of did this with Fates, but not really. Because in Fates, with their Dark Side DLC with the Elseworld story, where in this case Revelation, all the timelines happen. Birthright happened, Conquest happened, and Revelations happened. But you have like fixed loadouts that everyone's trying to figure out what's going on, and you go off to face your final boss. The same thing happens here to an extent. You have very fixed loadouts and how things work. Like, you don't get experience, you'll gain in bond points. Whatever level you're at when you enter in terms of bond points, you keep. Your inventory, nothing. You can only get what you have throughout the story. So basically, it's kind of weird how you want to tackle this. Do you want to tackle this super early so you can get all the characters right away? Or do you tackle this super late? Or like around the midpoint, where you have a lot of characters going for you. You don't have all the characters, but you can still do this. If I had to give a guess, I would say like chapter 16, I think was probably like a good point to go in there. Because like after playing chapter 16, you have a majority of your characters going for you. And then you can have most of the fight going in. Like, alright, we're good. We really don't have to worry about anyone else. You're pretty much good. But anyways, you go out, you head to Brodia, and there you take on Alcrest and Diamant, who have also seem like, if your first glance, they seem to be like almost like flipping roles, like, oh yes, like basically like the whole Celine situation, like, oh yes, I'm evil. And Alcrest is just a huge a-hole in comparison to his demure self, who's like, oh, I'm sorry, I know it's hard to be around me. He changes where he's like, ah, yes, I told you to be here, my pathetic excuse for a brother. And Diamant is also flipped, the confident man who would go around straight into battle and fight people side by side, is now someone who is afraid to rule because their father died, and then Alcrest basically believes, because of your mistakes, both my friends are dead, and my friend and my cousin are dead, being Citrine and Lapis. Jade's dead and Amber's dead, and he's actually very upset. Like, Diamant's like, if you bring him to it, he's like very upset and everything. And it also kind of changes with how the story is played out, with how Diamant and Alcrest are, like, again, very, like, aggressive. But, like, when you're playing through their chapter, if it's basically Brodia Bridge again, but the characters are more magic-based, if I was to give a suggestion. Because in the previous ones, like, oh yeah, physical, Brodia, like, all, like, strong of body, strong of heart, like, you know, physical strength is, like, their whole dealio. You don't really see a whole lot of magic users there, unless you're, like, going back for, like, training. And I'm talking more, like, in a, like, lore sense versus anything else. But, you do the whole battle, you fight through them, and he's like, ugh. Alcrest is just more pissed than anything else. He's like, fine, you took our emblem rings anyway, and therefore, like, we don't care. Like, you stopped our invasion. It's not like we can really do anything else to stop you. And it just kind of ends over there. And this, moving on to that, it's like after the post-battle dialogue, we have another scene where Nell comes up, and it's just like, and Alcrest and Diamant are like, hey, yo, what the heck? Why are you here? How'd you get past their guard? And I was like, oh, I killed them. Now, did you send an assassin to it? And they're like, hey, what the hell are you talking about? He's like, oh, you're useless to me. And Nell just kills them. And my first initial reaction was like, oh my god. The character who everyone thought was going to be evil, like Nil, he's not evil. I thought Nell's actually the evil one. Like they lure you in because attractive female. So people are like, yeah, she must be good. The one that looks very obviously evil is the evil one. And this is like a great way of like throwing people off, like, oh crap, is Nell really evil, to secretly assassinating all the royals? Because she says Alfred and Saline were much the same. They didn't put up much of a fight. And that's my thought process of like, holy crap, is she using the excuse of, oh yeah, we're just gonna put them all to sleep and all that? And she was like, that's an excuse to like, oh yes, I'm gonna grab all the power for myself, so that way I can be invincible and complete our dad's wishes. Because it seems quite strange, because in between each chapter, you get like these flashbacks to when Nell and Nil were kids. And it's kind of like, it's basically flat out said that by them, that twins of Sombron in this world always kill their weaker half. And they always die. And it's even shown later on with some of these that Nell is very protective of Nil. Like, despite the fact, by all accounts, he's a very weak unit because it reflects in gameplay, this man barely gets any stats. And it's kind of like on purpose, like, yeah, he's very weak, he's not very strong. Of course he's not going to put up much of a fight. And that's why it's like such an interesting like concept. And she like basically just like goes ape shit on some of these units, like, hey, do you want us to kill your brother for you? And she basically just like backhand pimp slaps all of them and goes on a massive rampage and kills them. Sombron shows up and he's like, oh my god, father, please forgive me. Because like Sombron's like, don't mind me, continue on. Get rid of these weak a-holes. And just further emphasizing that Sombron is the biggest, I guess like the biggest just a-hole in terms of character, if we're going all by like all the Fell dragons. Because like some of them have some form of respect and like logic and power from the ones that I played. Like Grima being like my go-to example. Grima's an a-hole who just wants to destroy everything, but that's kind of like how he's initially created. Anankos goes crazy because dragons, if they live too long, they essentially like go crazy. Their instincts take over. Duma, it was someone who again eventually went crazy and is power went to his head. Because, like, if you see in Heroes, when he's, like, paired up with Milla, he actually kind of feels bad about what everything. He just kind of wants to be nice, but he doesn't know how. So he kind of comes off as, like, a lovable goofball who doesn't know how to do anything. And, like, you kind of get this situation. Like, even with Rhea, to an extent, Rhea does go crazy, but that's only if you side with Edelgard. Otherwise, she seems like a broken woman who's desperately trying to cling on to the fact that her mother is gone. And, like, if you had a close family member pass away, you get that feeling. Like, you wish they were still there. And it may not be until, like, months or years later that you get that feeling. That it goes on like that. But, anyways, continuing on. We go into Illusia, where it's actually, like, one of, like, you get, like, one of the best cutscenes, in my opinion, because I'm about to, like, show it up here. Basically, Illusia is doing the same thing that they're doing in the past, and you see with the characters, like, with Ivy. I feel like she's the character who changes, like some of the most, in accordance to, like, all the changes in the story. Ivy is trying to resurrect the, Fell Dragon Sombron, and Tamara's going up like, nah, what the hell are you doing? We gotta put an end to this. And you're essentially, like, in this chapter, you get, I went over the other character, Gregory, that you met, who's basically the opposite of Gris, where Gris is a sadomasochist, Gregory is someone who actively avoids pain, and they have very similar backstories. He just says, I can't take it, and he leaves, like, his backstory. Madeline and Mavier actually have a very similar backstory to Marnie and Mavier, except Madeline is trying to prove herself as a knight, rather than Marnie, who's just trying to prove herself, like, yes, I'm the best, like, no one can stop me, and stuff like that. But anyways, these two go to fight, and it's actually funny with, like, the dialogue, because if you have Ivy versus Ivy, our Ivy's like, why the hell are you trying to revive Sombron of all people? Do you not know what he did to Dad? And, like, other Ivy's like, oh, you ain't that pathetic weakling that I killed myself. And Ivy's like, you are beyond redemption. It's actually kind of funny. And if you have Tamara, like, fight Fogado, she laments the fact that she essentially had to grow up. Because our Tamara and Fogado, they're very carefree, they go around, you know, live and let live, love, freedom, all that good jazz. Nah, Tamara was forced to grow up because of the situation. Because I believe it's implied, if you have Fogado fight her, that Fogado died before her. And she's just like, and her mom died, like, she's forced to be a queen. And go up and defend. But anyways, after this battle, you get, like, some of the biggest bombshells of, like, what's going on. After you defeat the two and they're like, ugh, we just wanted to find Strawberry and everything. If you were, like, going on, Nell's just like, give us your emblem rings. Like, their response essentially boils down to, hell no, we're not going to give you our emblem rings. I'd rather die before that ever happens. And Nell's like, alright then. And she does, like, one of the most horrific things I have ever seen on screen. She just flat out, like, you have it right here. She just kills Tamara and Ivy, like, flat out. I think she just eats them in the story. I was like, holy crap, when that happened. And even Alir's like this, like, what the did you do that for? And like, Tamara's like, you are a monster, just like I knew you were. And then she gets eaten, and Alir's like, what the hell is wrong with you? Why would you do that? Now they have no leaders. How the hell are their people supposed to survive? And this is where Nell drops, like, the biggest bombshell of the story, I believe, in my opinion. Or, like, one of them. Because, like, you get a lot of moments of, like, boom! Of, like, the, like, sound effects of, like, boom, like, this happens. Then boom, this happens. Then boom, this happens. You get that Nell essentially says this. No one in this world is alive other than us that are right here at this moment. And Alir's like, excuse me, what? Everyone that we've ever talked to at this point has just been corrupted. So, like, the only characters who are still alive are the Four Winds, or this, like I said, Gregory, Celestia, Madeline, and Mavier. And Nil Nell and Alir, and whoever's their army with them at the time, they're the only ones who are quote-unquote human and sane in this world. And it just reflects on it of like, oh my god. And Alir almost has like a mini breakdown. And then he's like telling us like, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell your friends? Why didn't you tell your brother? He's like, why didn't you tell anyone? And Nell's kind of like passive aggressive about it. Like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I should have told him. I apologize. And Alir's like not having any of that shit. Like, nah, you should have told him. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And she's like, shut up. What do you know about our world? How can you come here and say these things with their face? And like something I joked about in the playthrough when I was going through about this, because I have that recorded as well. Something that's just like, I was joking about like, nah, they had like a crush on them or something. They were former lovers or some crap. It's actually revealed that through like a flashback that Nell had a crush on their world's version of Alir. Because Alir took them in and let them stay with them. Saying like, hey, I understand. I was in a similar situation until someone took me in. So I'll take you in. And Nell develops a crush on Alir. Or at least this world's version of Alir. I mean, if you've seen female Alir, I'd be like, yeah, no, I could see why. I could see why Nell, regardless, would have like a crush on Alir. And it's very... And then like she runs off. Because she's like upset because like this new Alir, who's essentially the same but not the same, just comes here and is like, no, you're not them. I can't be getting attached to this. And they feel very uncomfortable around them and they take off. Which I can understand, like, hey, they take off, everything's gone bad, this isn't the same person. And Nell's like, yeah, hey, go follow them, I'm not strong enough, you guys take them, we'll all be fine. And they do, the four winds kind of like almost stupidly take off to follow Nell, because Nell by herself is still very strong. But again, in a world of corrupted, it's like very dangerous regardless. And here's where we get another like really big bombshell. So you're just chilling out here with Nell, like between chapters, like, hey, we should be fine, everything should be going great. And then Nell's like, oh hey, Divine One, you should probably turn around and look behind you. And then it's revealed that Emblem Tiki is there, just floating behind him. And he's like, wait, what? How's that possible? And Nell reveals like, yes, I too have the power to reawaken emblems, because that's what Nell's been doing this entire time, just putting them down and just make sure that they couldn't be used again. And it's revealed by Nell, like, oh yes, I have their power. And his plan is like, you better come with me, Divine One. And Alir rightfully says, why the hell would I go with you? And this is kind of like a plot hole within like the story, where Nell just somehow knocks out Alir. Somehow. They knock him out, and they take him to this area in Solm, where you're gonna have to like try to go and rescue them. But it's like, that was like a very big plot point of like, how the hell does that happen? It's just like, how? Like at the end game, like my Alir had like god tier stats maxed out and everything except for what? Magic and luck. At this point in the story where I'm taking this on, like, if anything, Alir should be backhanding Nil in this situation. But anyways, that happens. The winds go and find them, Nell, and they go back. They're trying to figure out, hey, what happened? What's going on? And then Nell shows back. It's like, oh, thank goodness, Alir just took off somewhere with it. They're like, what? Yeah, let's go find them. So they take them to the Solm Desert, and then you get this situation of Nell betraying Nell. It's like, what do you mean, like, doing all this? And then like the four winds create a line to try and save Nell, so she can go chase after Nil, fight him down, and like basically figure out what the hell are you doing. And he's like, oh, I'm trying to get all this power because I am actually going to enact Father's plan to gain ultimate power and destroy all the worlds or rule over them. And then Nell's like, what the hell is wrong with you? And then you basically tried to proceed to save Alir in this situation. And in this case, this is like one of the very few chapters that you don't have. Like, I think it's like the only chapter, because I haven't played the end game. You don't have access to a Lear right away. In fact, you don't have access to them at all. They have no equipment, no items, no nothing. They're not even on a healing tile. They're just on a tile that boosts their evasion to make sure they can't be hit by enemy threats that are trying to target them in this like small enclosed space. And essentially you have to have someone babysit a Lear, because Lear can't do jack in the situation, and you have to basically fight your way to Nil, who has awakened Chrom and Robin, to essentially kill Nell and force a Lear into using the emblem rings to gain him ultimate power, or in this case emblem bracelets. Obviously that plan doesn't go through, but in this case you fight Fogado, who turns out to be that assassin from the first chapter, and I pointed out immediately, that's Fogado, because at this point in the story I'm like, yeah, I know what his voice sounds like. If they had a voice modulator, or Fogado talked in like a deeper, raspier voice, it's like, it feels like it removes the illusion of Fogado being like the one. He's like, yeah, see your power. Something like that. It's very simple, very basic, but it makes it obvious to not who Fogado is. And then you get to have a line later on, like, hello, surprised to see me. I'm like, you're familiar, other than it just being Fogado. And Fogado's like, yeah, it was me who showed up and attacked you with them. Nah, it's not a big deal. This Fogado, by the way, is a fucking psychopath. Like, I'm not even joking about it. This Fogado's a psychopath, but it's also because he's been broken down. And, like, the version of the events are, like, very skewed. Like, if you have Fogado versus Fogado, he's like, he jokes about, like, hey, at least the last thing you'll see will be, before you die, is my handsome face. And, like, I'll probably go to your world and kill everyone there, too. This Fogado's a psychopath. His friends die. Pandreo and Brunette, they die, and Epi doesn't brace him, but he's like happy about it. He's like a happy psycho. He's like the Joker in a sense. Like, Fogado, like, we live in a society. For that whole situation. Or Tenti, I feel like, is the worst. Worst off in the situation. Because her and Ivy, instead of Ivy trying to be close and them being friendly, Tenti is so self-degradating to, like, the point of, like, rivaling Alchrist. Because she, instead of Alchrist, who feels inferior to his brother, but still cares about them, Artentia fears Ivy. You see it in their battle dialogue, like, Ivy, I mean, Your Highness. And it's like, if you have Goldberry or Rosado, it's like, oh yeah, we're like all these cute things to get and shit off. I'm like, I'm not cute, I just try to stay out of the way. It's like very sad. It's like real. It's like a more effed up version of like the whole sibling war in Fates, where it was like Camilla had to go out and kill her other half siblings, like, until she eventually stopped trying to do that. It's really messed up. Anyways, you stop Nail, and you basically really like how they don't touch upon the point like how they captured him, but Nail gets up. He's like, hey, and he like captures Nell somehow. Then again, Nail's not actually weak because, like I said, he has Chrom and Robin. He actually does put in work, and like they fight, all that. He takes down. He's like, hey, you better come to the island that once floated among the clouds, and bring out this bracelet, or else we'll have a problem. And that leads to the final chapter in this case, where you fight aboard the Somniel, and it's revealed, like in this case, that Nil, like, yes, I have my own special power. Like, in between chapters, like, and Samra's like, figured out, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm not weak. And like, Samra's like, no. You have a power that's great all on your own. Here. I'm going to give you something. Don't tell your sister about it. And essentially, it shows Sombron's like a master manipulator, and also like thinking a plan like way in advance to an extent, because he's like, I fear my end will come. It's better that someone continue my ambitions rather than me, and should I perish. And like, he goes off and dies. He gives Nil the idea, like, hey, you're not weak, you have your own power, you can do this all on your own. And then that just kind of like ends the whole thing. And then like, it's revealed on something like Nil and Nell, like, I wasn't your brother the entire time. And it's like really messed up, because like Nell's like, what? Like, what are you saying? And it's like, yes, I wasn't your brother the entire time. And like Nell's going like, I was weak. Basically, he goes into the whole backstory like your brother died on the field, and it was like Nell says like my own twin died, and then Nell, the actual Nell, died in battle soon after Nell gave him her dragon. So like, hey, you may not have my power, but as long as you hold mine, you'll always be strong with me, and all that. And like in the in-between chapters, it like goes on. It's like a very deep, it's like very nice, and it's like, and it's replaced with like all this trauma. And then Alir shows up. He's like, hey, I came. And then Nell's like, hey, previous Alir here, our Divine One, they sealed the bracelet here, and you're going to unseal it for me. And then, like, in this case, it's the emblem of the Academy, being Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude. And that Nell's reasonably saying, no, don't do it, Alir. Don't do it, because if you do, like, you're just going to cause trouble. And he's like, yeah, you're right. But I'm going to do it. He's like, but I'm going to do it anyways. And so you fight off, and Nell gets like this incorruptible power, and he becomes like a final boss on the similar level of Sombron in the DLC. And you and the rest of your motley crew go out and try to stop it. It's also in between that it's revealed that Mavier, using the power of the Warp Staff, sends Celestia, Gregory, and Madeline away so that they may survive. And it's also hinted here, well, not hinted, it's just flat out said, that Vale died in this timeline as well. And like Mavier says something to the effect, Lady Vale, I'll be with you soon, or I'll see you soon. And it's like really fucked up, this thing about it, like, oh my god. Just like all this terrible things, just like gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. It just feels so bad. And it's just like more bombshells. But anyways, you go into this final battle with Nil. And it's probably like the most BS fight I have ever seen. Like, in regards to like characters like the DLC Grima fight, or where basically if you fight him on like any difficulty, he's like really bullshit strong. Or if you fight Anonkos, where it's kind of difficult but not really. In fact, now that I think about it, this fight's kind of similar to Anonkos, where you have to fight fallen versions of your comrades, and instead of Anonkos still resurrecting the kids' dead parents to fight them, which in my opinion is far more traumatizing. Sombron resurrects everyone you fought up until this point, all the royals, and they're like, alright, fine. Fogata has a funny line where you find him again. He's like, we get brought back to fight and die again. What's the matter? This is my third time doing it. And if he actually dies, like, and like, some of the characters have really messed up quotes. Like, Ivy regrets treating Hortensia bad. Hortensia is like, at least I'll see father again. It's like really messed up for some of them. And it's like, god dang, some of these gut punches. Anyway, so in terms of like the boss fight, Nil will summon characters to fight in the battles. Like, he'll summon Extra Corrupted, and on that first tile, you're not gonna beat him, because unless you do very, very, very specific setups, because I've seen those happen. What you want to do is kind of like you want to lure Nil all the way to the very back tile, basically at near where Alir will go into their cafe, and then you're gonna do damage there, do like a ridiculous amount of damage. Basically, though, after defeating Nil, despite the fact that he essentially gained God mode, he still comes out the loser in this situation, and he's like, why? And this is where Nell reveals that she knew the entire time that Nil wasn't her Nil. She knew, like, yeah, I know it wasn't you, but I wanted to treat you like my brother because you were my brother. It didn't matter that the fact that you were different. And it's actually pretty messed up, because after this, because like I just wanted to treat you like a sibling. I wanted you to treat me as someone who could be there for you. And then like I didn't realize that me just being here caused you this great pain. And so
in one of the most messed up like scenes, and another messed up scene in my opinion. I keep saying that, but it's like more and more messed up scenes that just keep happening one after another. Nell stabs herself to end her life, to try and bring Nil some comfort. But it does the opposite. As she lays dying in his arms, he's like, why? Why would you do this? I'll have no one. And then when she finally passes away, Nil remembers his own name, of who he was and what he's done. And it's like, his name is Rafal. And almost just like as an offhand comment from Alir, he brings up the fact that, hey, can't you bring him back to life? And Rafal's like, wait, what? Yeah, I recall Queen Lumera did something for me. It took a great long time and a lot of power, but she was able to do it. She was able to bring me back from the brink. Nell is still here. You could do something. And Rafal basically is like, oh crap. I still have all this power despite the fact that I lost. So, his whole plan is that, you're right, Divine One, or you're right, Alir, instead of doing it, like, I'm not going to let her sacrifice be in vain, and I'm going to learn from my mistakes. And, like, his plan is, like, I'm going to use all my power to revive, Nell. And that effectively is what's happening. Is that he's like, I don't know how long it'll take me, but I'll be back. And I'll be back with her. And like, Alir brings up fact, like, wait, aren't you gonna like go insane here being by yourself? He's like, maybe, but I think it would be a fitting punishment for all the things I've done for destroying this world. And that kind of concludes the end of the DLC. It ends on a very dark note that the world is essentially dead. It doesn't end like a very hopeful scene in comparison to like, say, Fire Emblem Awakenings DLC, where if you get the good ending, you defeat Grima, where none of the kids die. It's a very like happy, good ending. Whereas this one, like, it ends on a very dark, somber note. Again, Nell kills herself to bring Rafal relief, and then he's like, why would you do this? And it feels bad. And then Celestia, Madeline, and Gregory, they're the only humans left in the world, and Alir kind of just points out, like, hey, you can come with us. Like, again, because going to Awakening, if you get the good ending and defeat Grima with none of the kids dying, bam, good ending, like, the world's on a set path, come home good again, everything's going back. And sure, Fates ends on some of an ambiguous note, with the characters like, hey, we'll see each other again, and we'll see, very pleased to meet you. And like, it happens at the end of the DLC. If none of the characters die, you get a very happy scene where like, Kana, both Kanas, male and female, Shigure comes up, is like, very pleased to meet you, Kana. And they just have like this, the world's happiest face. Like, I kid you not. And even like Cindered Shadows as a DLC comes out and has like a very hopeful ending. Like, sure, the characters in the Elseworld story, yeah, they leave at the end, as you can see here, but they're happy. They got on with their life. They're more fulfilled people than at the end. But the characters of like Rafal, Nell, Celestia, everyone's dead, everyone's screwed, and like, it ultimately ends on like a very sour note. Like, Maviar sacrifices himself, and you can see with one of the pictures near the end where you bring them to the world, because again, like I said, Alir mentions kind of like offhanded, like, hey, you can come with us. And they're like, wait, will that be fine? Like, can we come to your world? And like, Alir's like, why not? Yeah, I know your world's dead and all, but hey, you could put your uses and talents to helping the people of this world to make sure they don't suffer as much. And like, here, like, it's more like helpful in like a hopeful sense, because like, you get like all these like it ends sour, again, like a whole world's dead, but you get stuff like this. Rafal does spend like a literal 1,000 years trying to revive Nell. You get like this hopeful scene at the end with like all the emblems being sent to another world, and it, like I said, it comes off very hopeful. And like I say, this is like definitely like one of the scenes I have near the end right here, where it's like definitely the most like hopeful scene that you're going to get in this like I guess like the most pleasant that right here. Gregory, Madeline, Celestia, they meet Mavier in the New World after, I'm assuming, coming out of the well. They are like Mavier essentially is not gone. In extent, this moment's only kind of good in like in like retrospective. It's like if once you see like their DLC dialogue and all that. But yeah, I feel like this DLC, it has like the right amount of edge that people were looking for in terms of the characters, because that's a lot of flack that Engage gets. The characters, to them, they say like, oh yeah, no, the character's boring, they don't change anything, they're very bland. I'm like, did you look through their supports? Because it shows like what these characters really are as people and how they act and how they propel themselves through the story and going through life. And that's what I feel like about this story. Has like the right amount of edge, kind of like all the DLCs where it had like, all right, there's a little bit more edge, like when Alear gets the emblem ring stolen, and like the Chronic Crystal, like, all right, yeah, it's their dark hour. The story cannot just be like all highs, because that's what they've been getting a lot, like in comparison to like some of the other stories. So it's like very, very good in my opinion. Has the right amount of edge, it ends on a hopeful note. And you get access to more characters in my character. And in my opinion, like, that's like the best thing about Fire Emblem is the character. You get access to Madeline. You get access to Celestia. You get access to Gregory. You get access to Rafal and Nell, because they come back. I don't know, because I was in chapter 25, like at the time they come back, because they join you like right away. Like I had Madeline, Celestia, Gregory, they all joined. And then Alir's just like, another peaceful day, isn't it? And then that's where we get all the then that's when Rafal and Nell show up, like, hey, yeah, it's been 1,000 years for us, but hey, we're back. And like everything kind of like just proceeds on as normal. It's like you have more characters, it goes through the game, and I feel like I said, just like the right amount of edge, but always ending on a hopeful note. Like edge is fine so long as you're not beating someone over the head with the edge. And that's like my initial review. I think this DLC is very good. Few minor plot holes and kind of like first impressions aside with like some of the maps, I still think it's very good. Like you get access to all these items, all these weapons, all these characters, and I feel like it's very good. Some people may disagree, like, oh yeah, character loadouts, all this, all that. I'm like, it's fine. Like I'm a character guy and lore story at the end of the day, so all this I like. I feel like it's a good DLC. It did take a long time. I kind of wish it was like a bonus, like secret ending unlockable. Like, hey, if you got like the best ending versus like the bad endings for the DLC, for the main game, you should have access to this. Like the Ancient Well just opens up because it was just there. And they're like, hey, you can use like this Ancient Well to go do stuff. Like, really? What does it do? And then you go off and do like all this stuff. I'm also I really enjoyed it. I think it was a very good DLC. Again, though, I kind of wish it was post game, because like, oh yeah, we have day 1 season pass launch. So be that as it may, like I said, I'm gonna keep saying it. Very, very good DLC. If I was to grade it, I'd probably give it like 8.5 out of 10. Like minor hiccups and like just kind of like story and like map wise, I think it's fine. But otherwise, yeah, that was my initial thoughts and impressions. I'll probably be dropping the other videos regarding the DLC later after this one shows up. But with that, everyone, my name is Omega Zero. And hopefully we end up on a positive note in the future, right? I'll catch you all later.